Welcome to this week's Cattle Call. I'm Susan Littlefield on the Rural Radio Network. Well, the market took an interesting turn. We're going to say the fact that Friday we had a cattle on feed report, which brought us some surprises. But then let's talk about HPAI, otherwise known as avian influenza, that has now had an effect on the dairy industry, which brings up concerns about, is it going to affect the beef cattle? So some marketing concerns that we're going to start out with first and foremost, and then we'll jump into that cattle on feed report as Brad Kooima joins us. He's with Kooima Kooima Varilek out of Sioux Center, Iowa. And avian influenza, we know, it came out as a goat in Minnesota. And then we said, oh, wait a second. We know what's causing the issues with these Texas dairy cattle, with Oklahoma, with Kansas, and now I think New Mexico was the other state that was mentioned. What's your takeaway? And are we reacting the way we should? And is the markets reacted like you thought they should? That's a loaded question, I know.
Yeah, that's an easy one. I
Okay.
mean, as far as many times as we've done these programs, right? I'm happy to try to address the question because it's important. And I'm sure, I've been asked this uncountable times here the last several days. So this story has, some legs. I would say that here we'd been hearing about some version of it for maybe 10 days or longer. Started in the Hereford, Texas area, the panhandle of Texas, with this mysterious disease. They didn't know what was the deal, but basically the main symptom was that decreased lactation. In other words, the cows weren't producing near as much milk as they had been suddenly. In some cases, the milk itself is discolored. I'm told sometimes that if they're pregnant, they abort the calf, and they were trying to figure out just what was going on. Was it a feedstuff issue or what? But it had been kind of contained to one area. But then you start to hear the spread of it a little bit. It's in more places than the states that you enumerated as well. I know from talking to people, for instance, in Michigan and stuff like that. Not widespread, but incidents of it. So I am certainly not here to create panic. And in fact, I would like to try to look at this quite the opposite of that. So from a marketer standpoint or from an analyst standpoint, the news was kind of, we were curious 10 days ago. And then 8 days ago, we're like, oh, this is kind of creepy. And then the last 3 days, up until today anyway, it's like going, are you kidding me? Seriously? Where the story kept growing. Okay. Now I feel like today it's maybe de-escalated a bit. I apologize. I'm seeing how we're going to close here because we're going right into the close and we are higher right now. So good. And what I mean by that was, I know you asked me off air yet. Somebody asked you, well, what's this got to do with beef? Well, here's the jump to the conclusion thing. This is why the market, I think, was especially worried yesterday. What if this creates a huge a round of culling of these dairy cows? Because the dairy cows, as long as they're ambulatory, they are able to get slaughtered, again, mostly hamburger, and they'll go in the food chain. So we would have had to, the worry would have been the extreme worry then, Susan, would have been, oh no, we got to assimilate all this extra beef back into the food chain. Well, so that's one worry. Okay. Here's another worry. And again, I'm not here to create panic. I think the market's handling itself nice today. Okay. But bad publicity. And I would cite two things: pink slime, which was the safest product ever manufactured in terms of grinding meat, and swine flu.
Yep.
A disease in hogs that didn't affect the meat. It was perfectly safe to eat. And what happened? The consumer went, oh my gosh, I better not, and they backed off, and they both had huge market impacts. So for me to just sit here, and I think some of it I'm sensitized because I did not react. I underestimated the significance of COVID. And I have not forgiven myself for that. Okay. I should have been in front of that thing way more than I was. I believed and wanted to believe, it's just like the flu. It's not a big deal, right? Remember the beginning of that stuff,
Mm-hmm.
I mean, so yeah, I'm probably guilty of maybe going like, well, I better try to, get my head around this. This is difficult stuff. Now, the fact that we're going to close here about 50 higher in the front months and over $1 higher in some of the feeder cattle months, that's a nice thing. I would like to think that yesterday, when we were jumping to all those worst case scenario conclusions, that was it, that was enough. And I think yesterday's lows are very important. So I thought the feeder cattle stopped at a great spot, right on a retracement, right on an old support area, yada, yada. And a lot of the middle months of the cattle got right back to halfway retracement of this last leg up. It's a very common place for you to hold. So the funds are still alive, okay? And you don't want them to come out. We need those on the long side. So there's my avian bird flu story. Now, maybe to get a little more detail, okay? Now, today's news, because I'm sitting here, I'm a smart aleck, right? You know, I'm going like, well, how come these beef cows don't get it? I watched them walking along the bluffs of the Missouri River many times, and there's freaking 100,000 geese out there walking around with them, right?
Mm-hmm.
Defecating and urinating, and cattle are eating their grass. And I think, and that's the story that's kind of coming out today, that this is a problem pretty much in old cows and or otherwise compromised cows, okay?
Yep.
So something that's in a confined facility, something that's probably not very vigorous, right? Doesn't have, you know, that type of built-in health that a young animal would have. You know, I'm not sure that probably there's all kinds of animals. I read an article from the USDA today that they've identified it in 200 different mammals. So young, strong, probably no big deal. So I'm hoping that that's how the market responds to this too. So we're going to lose a few old cows. So what? The cow market's super high. Cows were higher everywhere I checked yesterday and today at auction. So they're not. Milk futures are lower today. If they really thought this was going to debilitate the ability to raise, boy, I got you a really long answer here, didn't I? I'm very, very sorry. But then why would the milk futures be lower? You know, so I think we're feeling a little better that, okay, let's we got to pay attention, but it looks to me like hopefully this little fire is going to, you know, die out. I hope.
Well, I can definitely say, Brad, this was not on my 2024 bingo card. So
it's just another one of those deals, Susan, where, you know, things are finally going good. We're in a tight supply deal, and yet there's always something that can happen. If you're a cattle feeder, it's like going to SeaWorld. You are sitting in the first row all the time. You know, there's always a chance of something to go wrong. Every morning, I think I say this to our young guys and to our interns here. Every day when you go home, there could be something that comes out that makes cattle go down the limit. There is almost never something that comes out that makes it go up the limit. Now, sorry, I'm the old grouchy guy on the thing here today, but you got to recognize you got to do something with protect this market this high. You've got to use your head, right? You know.
So you talk about sitting in the front row at SeaWorld. Kind of how the feel was when those cattle on feed numbers came out on Friday.
Yeah, you know, we had talked about a big placement number on this report since the report that we had, remember, in February, right?
Oh, yeah.
The placements are really big in February, you know, and I might even mention on your program, I thought, I hope they guess them big. So at least, you know, and they did 106%. And then it comes in at 110. And your fine state of Nebraska, you led the way. Did you know that, Susan?
Yeah, I know.
Yeah, up 16% in Nebraska and up 18% in my state, Iowa. I didn't even know we had that many pens. Kind of hard to believe, but it is what it is. That's the statistics. That's the cards we drew. So big placement, particularly in the north. Also a big placement in Colorado, who's been way, way behind. Placement number in Texas, for instance, was only 99. So cheap feed. Maybe some of these corporate cattle moving to the north. I don't know. You know, that's what it appears to me to be. The other thing about the placement number that I'd like to add, because I don't know if people really look at these numbers as closely as I do, but I always look at the weight breakdown because it makes a difference. You know, you can only place them once, and then it's a matter of timing. The weights were skewed toward the heavy end. Okay, that's not great news. So as I look at it, you know, from strictly a supply sider standpoint, to me, that potentially has the most pressure in late summer. August, particularly, maybe August, September. And that's how we traded up until today. And then they were all about the same, but August was the weakest, certainly Monday and Tuesday. So yeah, that's a lot. I haven't let you ask many questions. We could talk about cash.
Waiting on that to happen in earnest.
Should be tomorrow.
Right.
You know, it's a short for a long, right? Because of Good Friday. early indications. So in the South, there was some 184 bids yesterday. Might have traded a few poor quality cattle that way. This morning, one of the majors took that bid from 84 to 185, which is the right direction. I mean, it's 3 lower than last week, but it's the right direction. They might have bought a few cattle that way, but most of the guys are past. And so I think there's some hope that we're still going to be just a little bit better than that. Now, so that's going to be lower for the week, I guess, but it's still, when you look at relative to what the futures have done, some of these months have broke $10. That actually should support, the discounted futures market. So people like to say cash is king. One of my best mentor, Charlie McVeigh, used to say, the beginning and end of all markets start in Iowa. And right here in Iowa, things feel like we're pretty current, pretty cleaned up. So I'd like to think that hopefully the cash does, cushion this thing. We're not going to have a break like we did in October, I don't believe. And now we'll go back to, trying to trade a little bit. This is a tough time of year to really rally, though. I mean, this isn't the time of year where you got to don't be crazy here. But we don't need to go down $30, that's for sure.
No kidding. Best way for folks to get a hold of you, Brad?
Well, hit us up on our website, I guess, kkbtrading.com.
All right, that's been this week's Cattle Call. Quick reminder, commodity futures and options do involve a substantial risk of loss not suitable to all investors. And that's the Cattle Call on the Rural Radio Network.